My name is Julie C., and I'm 28 years old. I had been with my boyfriend Mason for 2 years when he sent me a text I will never forget. We met at a mutual friend's birthday party, the kind with paper plates and music too loud for real conversation, so you end up talking closer than you normally would and pretending it's because you can't hear. He worked in marketing. I worked in logistics. Nothing fancy, but honest work. At the beginning, Mason felt warm, funny, and grounded, the kind of man who made you believe stability didn't have to be boring. For 2 years, I genuinely believed we were building something real. We settled into an easy rhythm that made the future feel inevitable. Weekend brunches, movie nights, grocery runs that turned into long conversations in the car. He introduced me to his family within 3 months. His parents, Bill and Carol, were welcoming in a way that felt sincere, the kind of people who insisted you stay for dessert and asked real questions about your life. His younger brother, Kevin, was 24, quieter, a little guarded, but polite. He worked in IT and lived on his own across town. From the outside, it looked like a healthy family, balanced, solid. The first year with Mason felt simple, safe, but slowly things began to shift in ways that were easy to excuse in the moment. Mason would joke about me upgrading my wardrobe, always framed as teasing, always followed by a smile. He would suggest restaurants I couldn't always afford and sigh when I proposed cheaper options, like I was missing something obvious. Once, at a work happy hour, he introduced me to his colleagues with a smile that felt slightly forced. Later in the car, he said, "You could have talked more. You were really quiet." I had been quiet because I felt out of place. His coworkers talked about European vacations, stock portfolios, second homes. I talked about freight schedules and shipment delays. He once said, "You're lucky I'm not materialistic, or this would never work." I laughed because I thought he was joking. Looking back, I understand now that jokes are often just truths wearing safer clothes. Mason compared me to his friends' partners more than once. Not directly, not cruelly, but often enough that the message settled into my chest. Lawyers, consultants, tech guys with flashy titles. I worked in freight coordination. I made $62,000 a year. It was honest money, stable money, but it wasn't impressive to him in the way he pretended not to care about. Still, he said he loved me. He talked about moving in together. He sent me listings for apartments in nicer neighborhoods, like the future was something I just needed to keep up with. I believed him. I thought if I stayed patient, stayed kind, stayed loyal, the sharp edges would smooth out. I didn't realize I was training myself to tolerate disrespect just to keep the peace. Then came the text. It arrived at 8:32 p.m. on a Thursday. I was on the couch watching a basketball game, half listening, enjoying the quiet comfort of a normal night. My phone buzzed. I glanced down, expecting something ordinary. Maybe weekend plans, maybe a joke. Instead, I saw this. "You know what? You're perfect for my brother. He dates trash like you. Maybe I should set you two up." I froze. The words didn't move. They just sat there, sharp and deliberate, glowing against the dark of my living room. I read them again, then a third time. There had been no argument, no tension, no warning. Earlier that afternoon, Mason had sent me a heart emoji. Everything had been normal, until it suddenly wasn't. The insult wasn't just aimed at me. It was aimed at Kevin, too. Mason managed to mock both of us in one sentence, calling me trash and reducing his own brother's relationships to something disposable. My chest tightened. My hands went cold. I set my phone down on the coffee table and stared at the TV. The game was still on. I didn't see it. I picked the phone back up and reread the message just to make sure I hadn't misunderstood. I hadn't. The cruelty was too clean, too casual. What scared me most wasn't the insult itself, but how easily it had been written, like this was a thought he'd carried for a long time and finally let slip. I took a screenshot. Then I opened a new message, attached the image, and typed his parents' names into the recipient field, Bill and Carol. My hands were steady. I didn't write a paragraph. I didn't explain. I didn't defend myself. I typed one line. "Thought you should see this." Then I hit send. No commentary, no emotion, just the truth, exactly as it was. I set my phone down and leaned back against the couch, realizing that for the first time in 2 years, I wasn't trying to soften something ugly to make it easier to swallow. Whatever happened next, I wasn't going to hide it. Carol called me 53 minutes later. Her voice was tight, not angry, but wounded. "Did he really send this to you?" "Yes," I said. "Tonight. About an hour ago." There was silence on the line. long enough that I could hear her breathing as she tried to steady herself. "I'm so sorry," she said quietly. "I'm so sorry." Then she added, "Bill and I need to talk to him. I want you to know this isn't okay. This isn't how we raised him." I thanked her, surprised by the validation. I had expected defensiveness. Instead, I got accountability. Then she asked, "Are you okay?" I almost said yes out of habit, but the truth caught. "I've been better," I admitted. She sighed. "I can't imagine how that made you feel. And Kevin doesn't even know yet, does he?" "I don't think so," I said. "This is cruel to both of you," she murmured. "Please come to dinner on Saturday," Carol said after a pause. 6 p.m. We need to address this as a family. You deserve that." I hesitated, not wanting to make things worse. "You're not," she said firmly. "Mason already did." I agreed. 10 minutes later, Bill texted, "Saw the screenshot. Unacceptable. See you Saturday." Short, direct, final. An hour later, another message came in, this time from Kevin. "Thank you for showing them. He's always been like this. They just didn't see it. I did." I stared at that message for a long time. Kevin knew. This wasn't new behavior. It was just newly exposed. By Saturday evening, when I pulled into their driveway at 5:58 p.m., the house looked the same as always. Warm lights in the windows, familiar and steady. I sat in my car for a moment, hands on the wheel, knowing I wasn't walking into an apology dinner. I was walking into consequences. Carol opened the door before I knocked. Her smile was real, but sad. Inside, the house smelled like roasted chicken and garlic. Mason was in the living room scrolling on his phone. When he saw me, his expression shifted from surprise to something smug, like he thought I'd come to fix things. "Dinner's almost ready," Carol said. "Everyone, let's sit." We moved to the dining room. The table was set for 5. Bill at the head, Carol at the other end. Then she pointed to the chair beside Kevin. "Julie, sit here." Mason's smile flickered, and in that moment, I understood this wasn't a normal family dinner. It was the beginning of the end. I sat down beside Kevin exactly where Carol directed me, and the room shifted in a way that felt deliberate, not hostile, controlled. Mason took his seat across from us next to Bill. His posture relaxed on the surface, but his eyes kept moving, scanning faces, trying to read the room like it was a puzzle he could still solve. "This feels cozy," Mason said with a light laugh, like he was testing whether humor could reset the night. "Like old times." No one responded. Carol brought the food out carefully, as if routine might keep the edges from cutting too deep. Roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans, a basket of rolls, the kind of dinner that usually meant comfort. Tonight, it meant containment. Bill served himself without a word, movements slow and measured. Kevin stared at his plate, jaw set, like he'd already decided he wasn't here to protect anyone anymore. Carol asked Kevin about work first. He answered simply, "A new project, tight deadlines. Nothing dramatic." I stayed quiet, cutting my chicken, listening. I wasn't here to perform calm or forgiveness. I was here because Carol asked me to be, and because part of me needed to see whether Mason would finally be forced to look at himself without an escape route. Mason turned to me with a practiced smile. "So, Julie, how's work been?" "Good," I said. He waited, clearly expecting more. "Just good." "Yes," I said again, "just good." His smile tightened, irritation flickering through before he masked it. He turned toward Carol. "You didn't say we were having a whole thing tonight." "It's not a thing," Carol said evenly. "It's a conversation." Mason's laugh came out sharper this time. "About what?" Carol set her fork down and folded her napkin carefully, like she was bracing herself. Then she looked directly at her son. "About respect." The word landed heavy. "Respect," Mason repeated, scoffing. "Seriously." "Yes," Carol said. "Respect for people. Respect for family. Respect for the woman you say you love." Mason leaned back in his chair, eyes flashing. "You're all overreacting." Bill finally spoke, his voice low and flat. "We're not." Mason's gaze snapped to me. "You really showed them that." "I didn't change anything," I said calmly. "I just didn't hide it." Carol reached for her phone and slid it across the table. The screenshot. Mason stared at it like it had betrayed him. Then he looked up, anger burning hot. "That was private." "It was cruel," Carol said. "And you insulted your brother as well." Mason turned toward Kevin. "You know I didn't mean it like that." Kevin lifted his eyes slowly. "You did," he said. His voice was quiet, steady. "You always do." Mason's mouth opened, then closed. "It was a joke." "No," Kevin said. "It wasn't." The silence that followed was thick. Mason shifted, clearly searching for footing. "You're all taking this way too seriously." Carol's voice stayed level. You called someone you claim to love trash. For no reason. That isn't a misunderstanding. That's a choice. Mason pushed his chair back abruptly. This is unbelievable. You're ganging up on me. Sit down, Bill said, not raising his voice. Mason grabbed his keys from the counter. I'm leaving. If you leave, Carol said calmly, don't come back tonight. Mason froze, hand on the door. He turned slowly. You're serious. I am, she said. Apologize, or take some time to think about who you're becoming. Mason looked at me, eyes sharp, daring me to rescue him. I didn't move. Then he looked at Kevin, who didn't look away. Slowly, Mason returned to the table and sat down. He didn't apologize. He just stared at his plate, jaw tight, humiliated and furious. Carol picked up her fork again. Bill took a sip of water. Kevin stayed quiet, but something in his posture had shifted. Like a weight he'd been carrying wasn't his anymore. After a moment, Carol leaned back slightly and said, evenly and clearly, at least one of my children has taste. Kevin didn't smile, but his shoulders relaxed. Mason went pale. The confidence drained from his face, replaced by panic, then rage. He didn't speak again for the rest of dinner. When it ended, Bill excused himself. Carol began clearing plates. Kevin walked me to the door and hugged me briefly. Thank you, he said, for not letting him get away with it. Outside, the air was cold and sharp. I reached my car when I heard Mason behind me. Julie, wait. I turned. He stood several feet away, arms crossed, anger barely contained. You had no right. You had no right to say it, I replied. You embarrassed me, he snapped. You embarrassed yourself, I said. This is over one text. And this is over 2 years, I said, over every comment that made me feel smaller. He scoffed. You'll regret this. No, I said, I won't. I got in my car and drove away. In the mirror, Mason stood in the driveway. Kevin was still in the doorway behind him, silent, unmoving, finally done, protecting someone who never protected him. I hadn't even made it halfway home when my phone buzzed again. A group chat notification popped up, one I didn't recognize at first. Family and close friends. Someone had added me. The messages started coming in fast, overlapping, like a dam had finally broken. Kevin wrote first, I'm proud of you for standing up for yourself. Then Carol, you deserve better than how Mason treated you, tonight and always. Another message followed from someone named Tyler, a cousin I'd met maybe twice at holidays. He said the same kind of thing about his last girlfriend, called her a loser behind her back. I heard him at Thanksgiving 2 years ago. That one made my grip tighten on the steering wheel. This wasn't new. This wasn't stress. This wasn't a bad night. This was a pattern. More messages appeared. An aunt. We've been worried about him for years. A family friend. I'm glad someone finally called him out. People I barely knew. People who owed me nothing, all saying versions of the same thing. Not one person defended him. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car while the messages kept coming. 15, 20, 30. Each one peeled away another layer of doubt I didn't even realize I was still carrying. Mason hadn't crossed a line once. He lived on the other side of it. Over the next week, the fallout spread outward. Mason posted vague stories online about betrayal, about trust, about how private messages should stay private. Mutual friends reached out to me, confused. I didn't explain. I didn't rant. I sent the screenshot. Every time, the reaction was the same. Silence, then support. One friend called me on Tuesday. He's telling people you manipulated his family, she said carefully, that you twisted his words. Did you see the screenshot? I asked. Yes, she said. There's no context that makes that okay. She stopped talking to him after that. So did others. His circle shrank quickly once the truth stopped being theoretical and started being visible. Mason tried to contact me once. A call, then a text. Can we talk, please? I blocked the number. I didn't feel dramatic doing it. I felt finished. 2 weeks later, Kevin sent me a short update. He asked Mom and Dad for money to help with rent. They said no. They told him he needs to figure this out on his own. I didn't ask where he was staying. I didn't need to know. His consequences were no longer my responsibility. A month later, Kevin and I met for coffee. Not a date, not anything complicated, just two people who had finally stopped pretending. We sat outside a small cafe downtown. The sun was warm. He ordered a latte. I ordered black coffee. He's transferring to another city, Kevin said. Portland. Good for him, I said, meaning it in the distant, neutral way you do when someone's life no longer intersects with yours. You okay? He asked. I really am. He nodded slowly. Watching you walk away made something click for me. We talked for another hour about work, about life, about nothing important. When we stood to leave, he hugged me and said quietly, "Thank you for showing me it's okay to stop protecting someone who hurts people." I drove home lighter than I had felt in years. 3 months later, my life looked different in ways that felt steady instead of dramatic. I moved into a new apartment, bigger than my old place, in a better neighborhood. Hardwood floors, a small balcony overlooking a park, space to breathe without feeling like I was being evaluated. I got a promotion at work, more responsibility, more pay, $78,000 a year. Not flashy money, but enough. Enough to feel secure. Enough to stop apologizing to myself for wanting stability. I started seeing someone new. His name is Daniel. He works in education, teaches 5th grade. He listens when I talk. He remembers small details. He doesn't joke at my expense. He doesn't compare me to anyone else. He treats me like I'm already enough. One night over dinner, he asked about my last relationship. It ended badly, I said. How badly? He sent me a text calling me trash. Daniel set his fork down slowly. That's not a joke. I showed it to his parents, I said. They took my side. He nodded once. Good, you deserve that. For the first time, my story didn't feel embarrassing to tell. It felt like proof. Kevin and I stayed in touch casually. Memes, articles, occasional check-ins. Easy. Uncomplicated. Safe. Mason reached out one last time through Kevin. Kevin called me on a Sunday afternoon. He wants to apologize. He asked me to ask if you'd talk to him. Tell him I'm good, I said. You sure? I don't need an apology, I said. I'm already past it. Kevin didn't push. Okay, I'll tell him. I hung up and felt nothing. No guilt, no conflict, just peace. I don't think about Mason much anymore. When I do, I think about the text, the dinner, his mother's words. At least one of my children has taste. That sentence stays with me, not because it was cruel, but because it was honest. Mason thought I would accept his insults. He thought I would stay quiet. He thought I would keep shrinking myself to make him comfortable. But trash doesn't send screenshots to parents. Trash doesn't sit calmly at a dinner table while someone self-destructs. Trash doesn't walk away with dignity. I did. Some people believe love is enough. It isn't. Respect is. Kindness is. Decency is. Without those, love is just an excuse people use to avoid accountability. Mason showed me who he was when he thought there would be no consequences. I believed him the first time. Carol and Bill still invite me to family events sometimes. Mason isn't there. Kevin is. Daniel is. We eat. We laugh. We talk about nothing important. It feels normal. Easy. Right. That's what life is supposed to feel like. Not walking on eggshells. Not wondering if you're good enough. Not apologizing for existing. Some people say the trash takes itself out. I think sometimes you just have to be willing to open the door. I opened it. I walked through, and I never looked back.